What went wrong for the Leafs after back-to-back losses over the weekend? We'll discuss that more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. What's going on, Dave? How are we feeling after that weekend?
Well, got my butt whooped in fantasy football.
You must have been playing anyone with the Vikings receivers or Josh Allen.
Yeah,
those guys went off today.
The Charbonnet, the Seahawks running back that was in for Kenneth Walker. It was a fun weekend. Just fun weekend.
So not only did you watch the Leafs get their I wouldn't say butt kicked, but lose on Friday to the Capitals, lose on Saturday to the Penguins, and then you got to watch your fantasy teams get their butt whipped on Sunday. So just a whole weekend of butt whoopings for Mr. Morassutti. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and then it's going to conclude with the Cowboys absolutely just getting it's going to be like a 4 days of just brutal results. Although my Juventus did salvage a draw, so it was only one. Yeah, so half happy for that one.
We're happy with ties now. Is that what your life has come to? Where you're happy with ties?
They were down 2-0. They came back to draw, so that's a big thing,
It's not. If they would have won, that'd be a big thing.
Yeah, their coach got ejected from the game too, which it was an interesting weekend, I will say, for sports wise in my calendar.
Dude, I thought, was it Friday night's game? Yeah, so when the game's on the weekend and we have like a day in between, sometimes they blur together. But it was Friday night where Berube was really giving it to the refs. Like there was a couple of missed calls there, and he was real. Like at some point, I feel like he's gonna blow a gasket. Like he's a stern guy and like kind of a scary dude. He doesn't necessarily have like the theatrical, tantrums that Keith had. But at some point, like I just feel like this guy's gonna blow up. It's like, and it felt like it was getting pretty close to that on Friday night, didn't it?
It did, because it was getting a little like when Berube, like he's a very calm guy on the bench, even like towards the players. He's not really yelling at guys. He is like the opposite of John Tortorella, which is funny because we expected him to be more of that, like yelling at players and things like that, and it's like, nah, he keeps a very cool demeanor on the bench. And then to see him really, like, he didn't even have to like go on a long rant, just says a couple words, has that look on his face, like,
yeah, that I'm gonna kill you if you don't do what I say.
Yeah, like, do your job.
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of like Bill Belichick, like,
do
your job.
Little bit, do your job, play simple. We have a certain game we want to play. And I'll be honest, like they lost these games, but like they didn't play poorly. Like they could have went either way, both of them. Like, let's be honest. They lose 3-1 to Washington Friday evening and then come back. They got to travel cross border, go into Kyle Dubas's house at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh, and they lose 5-2. It was 3-2, couple empty netters. So the score seems a little more lopsided than it actually was. But honestly, for me, like when I look back at both of those games and I try and, find a common theme, it's not that I'm trying to make excuses for the Maple Leafs, but like it was just a weekend of bad bounces for them. Both games were brutal. Like they just continually found themselves on the wrong side of all the bounces. Like look at the few goals that we saw occur over the weekend, right? I went back and I was just looking at them. Nick Dowd, right? The first goal that opened the scoring in the Washington game. I mean, that should have been an icing, but it just happens to go off. I can't remember whose stick it was in the neutral zone. It just happens to like glance off it and goes down. And then Timmins tries to pass it around the boards, and Nick Robertson fumbles the puck, bounces awkwardly over his stick, and boom, it's a turnover, and it's in the back of the net seconds later. And then you look at the Matthews giveaway. On the second goal, turned out to be the game-winning goal. I mean, it just hits the ref. Like, how many times has that happened in the game? Not very often. Somehow the refs do a really good job of staying out of the way. That time, not the case. Hit him in the skate, goes out in front, and then the Capitals are able to score. Like, both of the goals, and then the other one was an empty netter. So, like, both of the goals literally just came off of bad bounces. Fast forward to the next night, Dave. Crosby's bank pass off the back comes out to Rust, and he just roofs it. And then Michael Bunting on the game-winning goal is kind of a broken play on the power play, and it goes off a skate, and it gets right to Bunting. He just kind of, bats it home. Like, just honestly, a weekend of bad bounces. And then how many posts did the Maple Leafs hit in that game? Like, Nyes was this close to tying it up the other night against Pittsburgh. This close. And Tavares, this close Friday night, tying the game. Like, it's funny. It's just comical almost how bad a bounces. Like, they didn't get any bounces go their way, and everything went their opponent's way. Again, it's not an excuse. I don't want to say it's an excuse for why they lost, but sometimes the hockey gods are like that. And when you've won 8 of 10, sometimes you're going to get, punched in the mouth a little bit. And it seems like that's somewhat what happened for Toronto this weekend.
Like, watching those games, how many times I was just like, shoot the puck, because like there were weird goals coming in, and like, why does it happen? Because you put yourself in those scoring situations, and like that. I feel like sometimes the Leafs are trying to either force something that's not there. They try to get too cute. Like, we heard a lot on the broadcast, like north-south, right? Avoid those east-west plays. Like, those are things, those are habits they're still trying to, like, I think the coaching staff is still trying to get out of with this team, right? And so, like, yeah, no, I didn't think they played bad. I do think there were times where, especially on the Washington goals, there was the extra hustle, right? The Nick Dowd goal, yeah, there was a lot of bad luck on it, but it was also, he recognized there was an opening there. He hustled, and the Leafs were just like, where? Oh, yeah, now it's in the back. Like, they had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Right. Leaving, I think Benoit was covering 2 guys. He didn't know who to take because, like, you take one guy, you leave the other guy open, right? So it was almost like you pick your poison with that. And yeah, but it also goes to show just how, like, Washington, that's a team that's playing the right way. They're hungry. They are. I mean, Tom Wilson had a pretty interesting weekend after he had a softball grow inside of his mouth after the Montreal game.
Yeah.
Like that, but that's a team that's got a good balance. They got the physicality. They've got, guys that are just playing the right way.
It's a good team. Yeah, they're a good
right?
team. And Pittsburgh's turned it around too. Like, Pittsburgh, they won like 5 of 6 going into it. So, like, Pittsburgh has turned it around also. So it was a tough weekend to have to go play Washington and then have to travel across border to play Pitt the very next night. Difficult scheduling.
Like, Washington had won 7 in a row on the road going into
it was
that
like
game.
4th game in 6 nights too for Toronto after being off for a couple of weeks.
You could tell in the Pittsburgh game they were starting to lose. They didn't have the full tank there, right? But hey, guess what? They took advantage of that easy schedule that they had. Mm-hmm. Now, like, it's gonna pick up, and I'm just like, really wish they didn't let Tristan Jarry look good, right? As well.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, it's so Toronto for that to happen, right? Struggling goalie, and then what? Like, it's almost like the Leafs are the antidote for struggling goaltenders, or for like rookies who like want to just find their footing in the NHL. It's like, just play Toronto, you'll figure it out. It just always happens to be that way. I don't know why. It's just kind of the bad luck, I guess. The bad bounces of being a Maple Leafs fan is having to watch either no-name or struggling goalies look like vintage Patty Waugh against the Maple Leafs. It's absolutely insane. Max Pacioretty, return to the game. Why don't we come back? We can get into Pacioretty's return. The guy who was taken out of the lineup in place of Pacioretty was a little bit of a head scratcher. We'll chat about Nick Robertson's evening in the press box as well. And there was a big trade that went down on Friday. Jacob Trouba dealt to the Ducks. I want to get your thoughts on the entire situation, and then maybe Toronto could potentially get involved in Trouba's services down the road. Want to get your thoughts on that too. It's all coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of huckles just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it is really easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. There, you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes of on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curates and makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events. They've got all-in pricing that shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can even get a panoramic view of your seat right in the app before you even purchase it. And Game Time has the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with new episodes of the Locked On Leafs podcast available wherever you can get a podcast for you on-the-go listeners, audio-wise, and also you can stream and view the podcast on YouTube every day as well. Dave, are you familiar? This is going to be just a random anecdote story that I'm just going to toss in here for you. When's the last time that you've been inside the Royal Fairmont?
The World Fairmont.
No, the Royal.
Oh, sorry, the Royal Fairmont?
Yeah.
I heard World. Royal Fairmont?
Yeah, like across from Union.
When my cousin had his wedding reception there, that would have been...
Oh, that's a nice place to have a wedding.
Yes, and I was old enough to drink, so this would have been... I was like just out of university too.
It's like 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Yeah, it was definitely pre-pandemic.
So you're familiar with the stairs?
Yep.
Right, the stairs there.
Yep.
So true story. I was there Saturday night celebrating my one of my best friend's wife's birthday, and she had recently hurt her ankle, so she couldn't necessarily do the stairs. So her husband thought he'd be all hero mode and carried her down the stairs like so, right? And well, they took a tumble. Took a bit of a tumble down the stairs, Dave. My Saturday night was spent in the hospital, actually.
Oh, and I've been down that road before.
Tough outing for for him and her. Yeah, she ended up with a dislocated elbow after it. And we joked around. Yeah, he basically threw her down the stairs, and it was it sucked. But yeah, if you
Man.
know, like those are like tough
Yeah,
stairs too.
those are tough stairs. Or old stairs. Old stairs are built well and hurt.
Yeah, yeah. So it was right across from where the Leafs play, basically right across from Union. So, but
Oh,
anyway, so Saturday night, while all that was happening, the Maple Leafs game was happening, and I had to go back and watch it. And like I said, the score not as indicative as how close the game was. 5-2. You know, I was just following along like in the hospital, and obviously once I put the tape on and I watched it, I'm like, oh, okay, the Leafs actually played decently well. Let's get to the good, the bad, the ugly. What was good about the game? I guess you could kind of do for both games, but what did you like about the Maple Leafs and how they played this weekend against Pittsburgh and or Washington?
I mean, they were close games, right? Like I know the score in the Pittsburgh game doesn't suggest it was a close game, but that was a close game. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was a couple of empty netters, right? That and I felt like Marner got a goal, pretty nice goal, right? That pass from Tanev on the Tavares goal, even though he didn't even want to celebrate it. He's like, we lost. I don't care. Like I don't care.
Yeah,
But, the touch
that was
on
mine. That does like the flashy, like the Tavares goal.
the
Like
flashy pass, but the
oh
finish from John. That was like watching John Tavares when he was playing for the World Juniors, or when he was like first in the league, and he would like first starting out in the league. He just have those unreal goals. Like probably the best Leafs player one-on-one with a goalie.
well, they say the hands are last to go, right? Like the boots usually go first, and then your hands are last to go. And once you've lost your hands, you might as well hang up the skates. And obviously, the hands very much still intact for old Johnny T. That was just a beautiful goal, like unbelievable. Heads up play to notice that the Leafs were getting possession back, and I could get in behind the defense and get in on a breakaway, and then just a beautiful backhand shelf. But yeah, the setup too, the heads up pass from Chris Tanev doesn't get nearly enough credit for his breakout ability. Like I know that it now has been talked about, I guess, since he's gotten to Toronto and more eyeballs have been on him. But like he's been doing this his entire career. Like when he was in Vancouver, when he was in Calgary, last year when he was in Dallas, like he's always been slept on as like an elite. It's tough to call him a two-way because he doesn't put up a lot of points, but the way that he can generate offense with breakouts like that, you almost want to call him a two-way defenseman. But it's really, man, Tanev has been such an absolute delight for this team. And yeah, that whole play and the start, the finish, that whole thing was the best we saw over the course of the weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was the best thing we saw, and it just kind of proves the old guy still got it.
You got it. You still definitely has it. The bad, for me, I think was just like the undisciplined penalties against Pittsburgh, and that really is what cost them there in the third period, right? Take a couple of penalties, and all of a sudden, they score, and Bunting ends up with the power play goal to go ahead. Had 2 goals on the night, so 2 power play goals. And Toronto's penalty kill has been pretty good lately, but you start to take too many. I think they go 2 for 5. Pittsburgh went, so you take 5 penalties. Yeah, they're bound to score. It's a 20% at least power play, so they're bound to score 1. They end up getting a second, and that was the difference in the game. Quite literally, the difference in the game. At 5-on-5, I thought Toronto played well. And the numbers support that Toronto actually outplayed Pittsburgh. But you give up those 2 goals on the power play, and that's a killer.
How many times have we talked about, like, you could play well at 5-on-5, but if you lose a special teams battle, sometimes you just can't overcome it.
Dude, right? Craig Button talks about it all the time. And I remember when I was hosting Leafs Lunch, he always used to say, like, your power play and penalty kill will sink you in the playoffs. And that's been a big reason for when Toronto flails out. Usually you take a look at the special teams, and they're getting dominated each and every round. And the one year that they actually won the special teams battle, what do you think that year was in the last
Yeah.
6, 7?
There's
Yeah,
one against the Lightning. Yep.
it was the one against the Lightning where they won in 6 games and actually won a round for the first time in 20 years. So, yeah, again, it hasn't been an issue. Like the power
No.
plays, finally coming around, and it's been scoring a lot more frequently. The penalty kill's been fine, but you know that was a game where they just took one too many penalties, and they got caught. They kind of got caught for it. What was bad for you?
For me, it was the penalties.
Yeah.
We've talked about the lack of discipline. I'd rather than say like sometimes bad penalties just happen. There's just this discipline. It's a lack of discipline with this team, and we kept talking about it. It's eventually going to get them in trouble. And their penalty kill's been good. It's not like it's been like you have a bad penalty kill. You shouldn't be taking penalties. It's that no, you're just giving extra opportunities to the other team. Yeah, you have a good penalty kill, but you don't want to be testing it unnecessarily, right? And that got them in trouble against Pittsburgh. So like that's one of those games where it's like you take fewer penalties, you're probably in a better spot to win that game, right? It's not even just that you're on the penalty kill; it's that you're taking your star players out of those opportunities to be in offensive situations.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I mean, you look at the ice time last night, and again, Marner played a ridiculous. I think he played upwards of 24, 25 minutes
25
last
minutes,
night.
I think I saw.
Yeah, and that's just it's a bit too much. Like he can handle it, obviously, but in an ideal world, he's not playing that much, and vice versa. That means that guys who don't play the power play or the penalty kill, like William Nylander, he's held to under 20 minutes, right? Like Pacioretty, who was in the game and was on the top line, quote unquote, he gets held to under 15 minutes last night, and Tavares is under 20 minutes last night. So, it totally throws the rhythm out of whack in a way too, right? So yeah, it's something to clean up for sure. The penalties. It's still a team that takes too many penalties. I mean, just overall, this has been kind of a theme, and lately they've been able to kill them off. Pittsburgh, they didn't, came back to bite them. The ugly, Dave.
The ugly is as the reason why Mitch Marner is playing 25 minutes. The depth is not able to step up and give them the offensive opportunities, the offensive chances that this team needs to take the pressure off the Stars. The depth is scoring is not there.
Well, maybe if Nick Robertson was in the lineup.
And I was gonna say,
oh wait, he's also not scoring in the lineup either.
Yeah, he's not in the lineup because he's not scoring. Ryan Reeves is in the lineup; he can never score.
Yeah, Dewar's not doing a whole lot when it comes to offense. Steven Lorentz had that great first 3-4 games, and since then, defensively has been fine, but offensively, nothing's there. Minton gave you a little bit of a spark, or Bankin hasn't really been able to convert. He's had some chances, but yeah, the bottom half of the roster not doing a whole lot of nothing. Alex Nylander, nada.
Again. Yeah, that's that. Like it's Nylander, it's Robertson, it's. I mean,
how much of an indictment is that on Nick Robertson that the coach decided to scratch Robertson to get Pacioretty into the lineup? Scratch Robertson over Alex Nylander, who was signed to an AHL deal 3 weeks ago, and now he apparently is getting the nod and has more of a trust to play, that role that's asked of him to play, just like a lower level fourth line role over Nick Robertson. Like that's I don't know, man. Is that last straw for Nicky Bobby? Yeah, you know what? Let's take a break. Let's come back and get into this because I think there is a little bit more of a conversation to be had here. I also want to get your thoughts on Pacioretty's return and the Jacob Trouba situation, which was very messy out in New York. We'll get to all that and more next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 of bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as always. And we're just talking about, before going to break, how Nick Robertson was given the old healthy scratch over Alex Nylander. They decided to go with Nylander. Now, I'm curious how much of it you think had to do with how, like, he had a bad game Friday. Terrible game on Friday. Took a stupid penalty, had a couple of bad turnovers. I wonder if it was like a discipline also kind of thing, as opposed to completely losing faith, I don't know, in this player. Maybe like a message sending type of situation for Berube. I don't know, but like, this is a bad look. The fact that Robertson is sitting up in the press box while Alex Nylander is playing hockey games. Like, is this the last straw for Robertson? Does he have to go? Like, does he need a change of scenery? And do the Leafs just need to cut bait with this guy at this point and just take whatever is being offered, maybe even waivers?
To me, the message was sent when you lost Bobby McMahon, Max Pacioretty, and Max Domi, and Nick Robertson did not even sniff an opportunity in the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, was the indictment right there on what the Leafs believed in what Nick Robertson's ability, like, to play up in the lineup, and like probably the best opportunity you can give him to do, like, to showcase himself. No, he was
Holmberg got more opportunity.
When Pontus Holmberg, a late round, again, sometimes you can't always look at where players are drafted, but in this case, you have a guy who was drafted a late round pick. Didn't have the offensive pedigree that Robertson had as a premier scorer in the OHL, right? 50 goal scorer, decent stats in the AHL. No, he's the one that's getting pushed over by a guy who really, in my opinion, he's fine in the middle in a third line role. I don't want to see Pontus Holmberg in the top 6. It's just because they didn't have anybody else, because he doesn't have the offense either. But like, that's, to me, is Nick Robertson. To me, it's just like I wouldn't even say cut bait. It's just like the relationship's not benefiting anybody. You're trying to stay together because you, like, I don't know why, but it's like one of those situations where, like, one side doesn't, like, neither side can really feel like it's so bad. It's just so toxic right now because he's probably lost all confidence. The Leafs don't have confidence. They're trying to just get him in, and it's almost like in like a pity way now. It's like, it's not like, I'm seeing him trying to get opportunities to score. He's fumbling pucks. He's falling down. He's trying to challenge players who are much bigger than him because he's playing against a lot of guys in the bottom 6.
He's trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And the problem is Berube wants him to play simple.
Yes.
But that's not his game.
No.
And that's the issue. Like, we talked about it a lot coming into the season, whether or not Robertson would mesh with this type of play, like with the Craig Berube system. Like, this isn't a new conversation. I think now we're 28 games into the season. I think we're at a point now where it's like, okay, Robertson's just not going to work here. New coach, doesn't matter. It's not going to work here. And I don't know if there's any team out there who'd be interested in but like, what could you get? Like, you're just getting like fourth round pick, fifth round pick.
You're doing like a Timothy Liljegren situation again.
I don't even think you're getting that.
I don't think you're getting it because Liljegren has at least played and shown that he can do something. Like, and it's like that situation where you go to like a Chicago or San Jose and say, look, maybe with more, a role that you guys can give him, he can have a bit more of a spark. He
possibly, but
you're at this rate, you're just doing it to move away, get a roster spot, and prioritize a roster spot for a player that's going to give you more of what you need in the bottom six.
well, they're gonna need that very soon. Like Pacioretty's back, right? Okay, Domi's coming back pretty soon. Camp is going to be back, right? Jake McCabe is going to be back.
Bobby McMahon's going to be back.
Bobby McMahon is going to be back. Like they need roster spots, not only like literally like 23-man roster spots, but like there's just no space for him in the lineup. So I
would even put him on waivers and see if a team would even take him at this rate. Like if you're it's just a team might even just decide we don't want to take that headache right now.
Oh, right? I think he get claimed off waivers. I think that would happen.
Think he would.
Yeah, I think he get claimed off. Someone would take him for free.
Kyle Dubas will take him in a heartbeat.
Possibly, maybe.
You'll feel that he goes for every every former Leaf, and he got. Look at that Pittsburgh team.
He drafted him. Right, he did draft him and Wes Clark was Wes Clark the head of the draft at that point.
Sure, Wes Clark was around at that point.
Yeah, and Spezza played with them, and yeah, like it very well could end up happening. But
just make a call. I'll do is say, what do you want? What do you want to offer us for him? Like
contract, just left him there. Just left him there, and it's like just.
Here, we've already paid. You don't even have to pay for the plane ticket for him. We've already got his equipment here. Everything's set up for you.
Yeah, I think his days are numbered here in Toronto. It's just not working. It's just flat out not working out. Maybe there's another player in the NHL that's in a similar situation. Maybe it's a blue liner of some kind or something, and it could be like a problem 1-for-1. But yeah, it's not working out for the Maple Leafs right now for Robertson. If you can get a 4th, 5th round pick, honestly, probably at this point, just take it because good chance they're going to get to a point where they're going to be forced to put him on waivers and they're going to get nothing for him. Really quickly, though, what'd you think of Pacioretty and his return?
Again, I think he's been off for a while, so you have to take what he does with a little bit of knowing that he's been out for a bit. I was surprised that he was with Matthews and Marner. I thought like putting him back with Tavares would have made the most sense.
Yeah, that confused me as well because also Nyes has played really well with Matthews and Marner.
Yeah,
like it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me why they decided to do that. But I mean, I'm not the coach. I'd be curious to see if they make that little flip ahead of the next game, though.
The only thing I'll say though is he was one of those players that was being a little over aggressive. He had a couple of penalties, but he's also you got a lot of young guys in there. It's nice to see a veteran like him. He's come back from injury and he's right back with the physicality.
Yeah, a little grit, bringing a little grit to the team. That's exactly what he's here to do. A little grit, and maybe he can pop in a little bit of offense. But yeah, top line Pacioretty is not what I think we all expected when he signed here in Toronto or came in on a PTO. But we got it. We got it. That's for sure. Jacob Trouba. Let's talk about that situation really quickly. We got like a couple more minutes here. So for those who aren't aware of the situation, Jacob Trouba, the captain of the New York Rangers, he's got another year left on his deal after this. He's got a cap hit of $8 million. Well, the Rangers knew they had to pay Igor Shesterkin a crap load of money, and they needed to get out of this deal. They tried to trade him in the summer. He has a 15-team no-trade clause, and he refused to waive it in the summer to go to Detroit. Well, they decided to play hardball, they being the New York Rangers. And essentially, it was reported Friday morning that Trouba was not going to be at practice and he was not going to play that night against Pittsburgh. And if he did not, there was a couple of deals apparently on the table for New York for Trouba. And if he did not accept any of those and waive his no trade, they're just going to waive him. So either way, they were forcing him out of New York. He's their captain, Dave. They treated their captain this way. What did you make of this whole situation? But a trade did go through. He ended up in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Basically, they took on essentially nothing. Like it took on the whole freight, and they gave up like a 4th round pick and a AHL level defenseman, essentially.
Yeah. The whole situation when we heard in the summer, I was surprised he was still the captain. Like that's the first thing. Like if I have no issue with what Jacob Trouba did. He thought about himself. He signed the contract. He had those rights to the no trade clause, but the Rangers have done this before with the Goodrow situation where, okay, you don't want to accept the trade. We're going to put you on waivers. And now he got sent to San Jose. It's cutthroat. But at the same time, you know what? A team like, especially in New York, that's been struggling, messages get sent. And this was a message sent. Do you like the message? Not really. I think it's tough. That's a tough deal of business for a player that I think plays tough. You know, I don't think effort was ever really an issue there.
No,
yes, I know that the foot speed has gone down a little bit, but you know,
he plays on the edge, plays with that physicality, and I mean the choo-choo Trouba train, man. Like he's the hardest hitter in the league right now, right? And he's a heart and soul type of guy. And I think the next question here, Dave, then is, well, Anaheim's not a competitive team, and Trouba's deal runs out after next year. I mean, I guess they could want to keep him around for character reasons and veteran leadership, but they could possibly get something out of it, right? Like they gave up a 4th round pick to get him. If you retained half his salary, Trouba's a much more attractive asset to teams at $4 million than he was at the $8 million that the Rangers are trying to move him at. I would imagine that's what Anaheim is thinking here by making this trade, and he probably becomes available. Now, again, whether or not he's willing to waive to go to other teams, I don't know. Like that no trade clause follows him, the modified no trade. But if you are Brad Treliving, Dave, would you be interested? Like there was a prevailing thought this past summer that they needed not one but 2 right shot defensemen to really round out the team, right? And now that you've got Tanev and McCabe working out so well instead of Riley, it feels like Riley now needs like another partner too, right? And a defensive partner at that. Someone who's going to be a stay-at-home defenseman, physical, like a Luke Schennish type. But maybe it could be Jacob Trouba at $4 million, or maybe you get extra creative, you get a double retention, and maybe you can get him at like a $2 million cap it or something. Would that interest you at all?
If I mean the double retention sounds nice. You have to find another team that's willing to do it for this year and next year.
Yeah,
I don't hate Trouba. I think you got to have him in the right role, right? Having Tanev certainly helps. That means that Trouba's not going to be expected to play, you know, a lot of shutdown. But
well, I think I look at it, it'd be McCabe and Tanev, and then Riley and Trouba.
Yeah,
and then
I wouldn't hate it. You just have to be smart about it, right? And Hakanpää doesn't seem like that's there's probably going to be some prevailing issues with that because of based on the injury, right?
His knee's pooched. It sounds like his knee is pooched. Like I don't have much faith that he's going to be able to play a whole lot. Like and even like 2 games, and then it's like, got to get another cleanup on the knee. It's like, jeez.
And it's not like they have a defenseman with the Marlies right now that's itching to get an opportunity. No. Right? You need
like are we really gonna tout Refi as a potential blooming top 4? No.
Yeah, like I like what OEL brings with his physicality. I really do. I like what the McCabe Tanev pairing does. But I look at Benoit. Benoit hasn't brought it this year in the way I thought he was going to. And Connor Timmins looks at times just out like it's too much for him. They need one more guy. I was actually on the Lockdown NHL podcast with Gil today,
Mhm.
and like I said, your trade deadline priorities: another defenseman, and looking at your depth forward. Trouba would be one of those guys that would I think fit the bill, and really for Anaheim, they're not going to look to get a lot out of Trouba in a trade. Like this is not, they're not going to go for big assets. So we'll see. It also depends if Toronto's even on his no-go list. That's the other part.
Right. There's a lot of factors
Yeah.
when it comes to it, but you just know at some point that the conversation's gonna pop up with Trouba if he ends up on all the trade bait boards again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, the Leafs have like Trouba's been a Leaf target for like Leaf fans for a long time.
Yeah.
Right shot, he can hit. At one point he could, move the pill a little bit. But man, can he hit like a freight truck? And that looked pretty good. Like you'd have to, absolutely know that Craig Berube would love a Jacob Trouba like player. So it is interesting. And I'll say this. So the reason why he wanted to stay in New York or in the tri-state area was because his wife is doing a residency, right? She's a doctor doing a residency there.
Yeah.
Well, Toronto's a heck of a lot closer than California to New York. I can tell you that. I can certainly tell you that. You can at least drive to New York City from Toronto. Cannot necessarily make a day trip from California. So maybe that's a selling point. Perhaps.
It could be.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Anything else you want to get off your chest before we head out? Or we solid today?
I think we're solid today. We got lots of time this week to talk about it.
Yeah, we
stuff.
do. We do. We'll preview tomorrow's game, or I guess Tuesday night's game on tomorrow's podcast. But that'll do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the podcast. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs pod on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.